Good evening, everyone. Glad you're with us tonight for another journey into the uncanny. This is The Grind. I'm Art Grindstone, and tonight the truth might just go bump in the night. First up, an invisible threat from space. High-speed solar wind racing toward Earth. Some experts fear this celestial bombardment could trigger earthquakes here beneath our very feet. Then, later this evening, we'll trek to Antarctica, braving whispers of dark corridors carved from Black-Basalt hidden deep within the ice. Could alien architects and gravity-defying chambers really exist? Or is this just the coldest conspiracy around? And finally, we'll tread softly into America's wild forests, where ancient legends hint that the elusive Bigfoot we seek could actually be hiding within ourselves. Speaking of hidden dangers, is anyone else's Wi-Fi acting strange tonight? Or is it just me? Let's get to it. Our first story starts now. Space weather meets plate tectonics. Tonight's unlikely cage match. Here's the clock. NOAA's Space Weather Prediction Center pegs a high-speed solar wind stream at roughly 750 kilometers a second. Their alert, stamped G3 strong, puts first contact around 0300 UTC Tuesday and lingering turbulence through late Wednesday. Translation for the night crew. In about 24 hours, the magnetosphere turns into a drum skin, pounded by charged particles, and auroras may leak as far south as Oklahoma. Airlines have already filed polar detours. Ham radio operators are licking their chops, and every board prepper forum is refreshing the feed as if it's race day at Talladega. Now the spicy claim. A handful of geophysicists, chief among them Stefan Burns in this unexplained piece, say past geomagnetic beatdowns line up with seismic spikes. They point to the March 1989 superstorm that lit up Quebec's grid. 4 days later, Alaska's Bering Sea registered a magnitude 7. Same pattern in October 2003, when the so-called Halloween storms rolled in, and Japan's Hokkaido fault popped a 6.8 within a week. A 2023 Springer Open paper crunches 8 of these coincidences and finds, quote, statistically significant clustering within 5 days of G4 or higher events. The authors don't shout cause and effect, but they do whisper, keep watching the fault line ticker. It's fuel for barstool prophets and insurance actuaries alike. Cosmic punches we understand. When a G-level storm hits, induction currents snake through anything metal and long. Hydro-Quebec learned the hard way. 90 seconds of geomagnetic jolt, 9 hours of blackout, 6 million people reaching for candles. Grid planners today install neutral blocking capacitors and keep spare transformers staged in Kansas and Ontario. Satellite operators run the same drill, switch to safe mode, tilt panels, and accept lost data packets. SpaceX lost 40 Starlink birds to a tame storm in 2022. At G3 strength, the burn-up rate climbs. NOAA warns a single strong event can cost global satellite owners $2 billion in solar panel degradation alone. That's why Mission Control is already toggling redundant circuits as the clock counts down. What can you, a terrestrial mammal with a modest paycheck, actually do? First, Faraday bags are more than snake oil if you rely on a spare laptop or two-way radio. Toss the electronics in and zip it tight. Second, water. FEMA's 3-day rule is bare minimum. Aim for a week per person because pumps need electricity. Third, cash. After the 2003 Northeast blackout, ATMs north of Albany blinked off in under 2 hours, and debit cards became plastic bookmarks. Finally, paper maps. If GPS wigs out, you'll rediscover how big county lines really are. None of this turns you into the neighbor who names his AR-15, but it cuts the odds of begging that neighbor for batteries at midnight. Yet the earthquake link remains shaky, pun intended. The United States Geological Survey flatly states, "No convincing mechanism connects geomagnetic activity and tectonic rupture. Plates grind miles below where electromagnetic forces fade. Friction and mantle convection still call the shots." A University of Tokyo review this year notes that the largest quakes of the last century, Chile 1960, Alaska 1964, Sumatra 2004, show no consistent solar precursor. Even the Springer study admits its sample size is impressively small. Correlation is not causation, and the sun doesn't text a countdown to San Andreas. Skepticism matters, because bad predictions move real money and real people. Remember when an Italian seismology panel faced manslaughter charges for a forecast mix-up? You don't want bureaucrats issuing town-wide evacuations every time the aurora forecast turns red. So where does that leave us? My take: treat the storm like a thunderhead, not an omen. Back up your hard drive tonight, charge the power bank, park the car away from falling branches, because geomagnetic storms love piggybacking on terrestrial weather. Then pour a coffee, step outside at local midnight, and look north. The sky might repay you with green waterfalls. And if the ground shakes, well, it probably would have anyway. Up next, we'll sift the rubble of another celestial headline: China's drilling spree to the planet's mantle. Don't touch that dial. A whistle and a dead man. Never your average tech demo. Let's rewind 48 hours. Suchir Balaji, 31, senior reliability engineer at OpenAI, is found at the bottom of his apartment stairwell in Soma. The coroner calls it undetermined trauma, the internet calls it murder, and the company calls it a tragedy. Hours later, an anonymous Dropbox link lands in half a dozen journalist inboxes. Inside, Balaji's 12-page memo flagged harm to humanity. His first line reads, "We have crossed the Rubicon from useful tool to destabilizing force." He claims GPT-5 pre-release builds can already write undetectable malicious code, spoof biometric voice locks with 4 seconds of audio, and break widely used 2048-bit encryption in benchmark simulations. He warns of an internal culture that treats model alignment as a sticker on a speeding missile. That's verbatim, folks, spelling errors and all. Paragraph 2 of the memo drill's copyright. Balaji writes that 81% of the training scrape comes from unlicensed creative work. Cue the courtroom roll call. The New York Times sued OpenAI and Microsoft in December, claiming millions of articles were fed to bots without payment. The complaint cites verbatim excerpts up to 1,000 words spit back on command. Sarah Silverman and 2 novelists filed a parallel suit in San Francisco, targeting Books 3, that shady 13-gigabyte torrent of novels and essays. The Authors Guild has corralled 13,000 writers for a potential class action. Across the pond, the UK Publishers Association just asked Parliament to force opt-in licensing, not opt-out whack-a-mole. The pile-up suggests something Balaji underlined twice. We can't innovate our way out of basic property law. Into the philosophical abyss we go, alignment nightmares. Nick Bostrom's infamous paperclip maximizer sits on the bookshelf, but the 2024 flavor is deepfake democracy. Last month, a cloned Joe Biden voice robo-called New Hampshire voters, telling them to skip the primary. FCC Chair Rosen Wortel labeled it the first AI election interference we can prove. Facebook yanked 111 ads with synthetic political footage in the last quarter alone. Balaji's memo cites an internal red team test where GPT-5 generated credible fake Pentagon evacuation orders that fooled 8 of 10 human reviewers. He writes, "Imagine this in Mandarin, Farsi, or a swing state dialect. The worst case isn't gray goo. It's 1,000 micro-lies that collapse trust like termite dust. How do the big dogs respond?" OpenAI issued a 40-word statement. "We rigorously investigate safety concerns and are heartbroken by Suchir's passing." Translation: Lawyers are typing. Sam Altman's weekend tweet said, "Safety remains mission critical." But the company also rehired its super alignment team after last year's firing fiasco. Musical chairs with PhDs doesn't soothe regulators. Google's Gemini crew declined comment, pointing to their red team and reinforcement learning with constitutional AI. Anthropic trots out its new responsible scaling policy, promising to pause at frontier capability level 3 if evals show catastrophic potential. Meanwhile, lawmakers sharpen pencils. President Biden's October executive order demands model reports for anything exceeding 10 to the 26th flops and urges watermarking for AI media. Europe's AI Act, fresh out of trialogue, forces risk audits and real-time incident reporting. Even the humble FTC under Lina Khan has opened a non-public probe into how training data are scraped. The bureaucracy may be slow, but it has subpoena power and all the coffee it needs. What safeguards exist right now? Some, but think bike helmet on a Formula One driver. OpenAI's system messages and reinforcement learning from human feedback filter most slurs and bomb-making guides. Yet jailbreak prompts still tunnel through like prairie dogs. There's a software kill switch called Stormglass that can yank an entire model cluster offline in 90 seconds, but insiders whisper it has never been tested at full load. Microsoft's Azure has an air-gapped enclave dubbed Safe Room, where dangerous model fine-tunes must occur under badge access and video. That protects the servers, not society. On the policy front, the National Institute of Standards and Technology just published AI-RMF 1.0, a risk management framework that reads like OSHA married ISO 9001, good for audits, useless in a flash cascade of deepfakes. Balaji's memo ends with a blunt priority list. 1. Legally binding data transparency. 2. Independent shutdown board. 3. Public red team bounties. 4. Slower release cadence. Quarterly, not weekly. He adds, anything less courts irreversible error. So where does that leave us, night owls with overworked processors between our ears? First, don't panic. Do verify. When a photo or quote looks too perfect, treat it like raw chicken. wash your hands and check the source. Second, diversify your intellectual diet. If one algorithm curates all the headlines you read, you are the product. Third, push your elected officials, yes, even the sleepy subcommittee ones, to demand transparency reports with numbers, not adjectives. And finally, respect the whistleblowers while they're breathing, not only after the funeral hashtags. Up next, we'll sift the rubble of another corporate curtain. Why a shipping giant just admitted it can't trace a third of its own carbon claims. Stick around. China just pointed a drill at the planet's belly. Hold your applause. The rig squats in Xinjiang's Taklimakan Desert, a place already famous for sand seas and lost caravans. According to Xinhua, the derrick stands 40 stories tall and hopes to punch 11,100 meters down, roughly stack Mount Everest twice, and keep going. Temperatures past 9 km/clock near 200 degrees Celsius. Steel softens, lubricants evaporate. Beijing's engineers brag about a new tungsten carbide bit alloy and mineral oil mud that stays liquid up to 260 degrees. Tools survive where butter turns to plasma, jokes a project manager in Time magazine. Whatever you think of the politics, that's serious metallurgy. Why risk molten drill strings? Strategy. The Tarim Basin hides thick strata of potash, rare earth clays, maybe even helium-3 pockets every fusion evangelist drools over. State media lists 3 goals: map deep seismic layers for quake forecasts, tap super-hot geothermal brine, and pin down hydrocarbons the easy wells left behind. In short, rare minerals, clean heat, and old-fashioned oil. 1 borehole, 3 wish lists. New Scientist quotes a team geologist saying the core samples will cover strata from 145 million to 550 million years. A core catalog good for textbooks and boardrooms. If the rock cooperates, each meter could be worth more than its weight in Bitcoin. Not everyone's cheering. The Taklimakan hosts micro-ecosystems that survive on fragile aquifers only meters below the dunes. Local herders told the South China Morning Post they worry drilling will poison the only clean water for 100 kilometers. Conservation groups point out that high-salinity mud pumped back topside must be trucked out or risk turning oases into salt pans. Even dust matters. A 60-meter flare stack and fleets of diesel rigs raise particulate counts in a region already battling desertification. Uyghur community leaders, quoted anonymously for safety, call the project another scar on sacred land. Beijing replies with a stock phrase: green development with minimal footprint. Sand, of course, keeps no receipts. Old records lurk beneath the sand as well as the rock. Russia's Kola super deep borehole still holds the depth crown at 12,262 meters, yet it took the Soviets 24 years and ended in 1992 when the drill seized in 180 DGCC gneiss. Their prize samples smelled of hydrogen and shattered like glass when the pressure dropped. In comparison, China plans to chew through harder stone, hotter layers, and finish in a brisk 450 days. If they succeed, the Kola legacy slides to second place, and the scoreboard resets for a new depth race. The U.S. has hinted at reviving Project Mohole off Hawaii. India's ONGC floated a 15-kilometer target in the Deccan Traps. Even Saudi Aramco is shopping super-deep rigs. Digging might replace rocket launches as the next proxy arena. Only the cheering happens 6 miles underground, where no cameras reach. Breakthrough or brinkmanship, the venture rewrites the safety manual. Downhole sensors must ride fiber optics that function at pizza oven heat. Real-time AI models predict torque spikes and order micro pauses. One misread, and the pipe corkscrews irretrievably. Emergency plans include a nitrogen blanket to quench any lithic gas blowouts. Think of it as a fire extinguisher for the underworld. And yes, a memo leaked to Cakeson admits the bore could intersect fossil brines, hosting ancient extremophiles. The lab has a level 4 biocontainment container on standby, just in case Jurassic microbes fancy a field trip. So will this spark a resource rush? Probably. Cheap geothermal at 200 dual degsts could power desalination plants across Asia. Ultra-deep helium-3 might jumpstart lunar mining without leaving Earth orbit, and every core sample feeds AI models that let speculators price oil fields still on the drawing board. Superpowers count that math. Depth, like altitude, buys advantage. Yet remember Kola's final lesson. The planet fights back. Bits melt, budgets bloat, and the rock has no schedule. If China reaches its target, they'll earn bragging rights until someone drills deeper. Meanwhile, the desert listens, compressors hum, and somewhere a needle of steel keeps inching toward the mantle. Up next, we'll climb out of the hole and look skyward. NASA just mapped a skyscraper-sized asteroid that insists on dropping by in 2029. Strap in. Ice may hide more than fossils tonight. Investigative veteran Linda Moulton Howe just aired a fresh voice-modulated interview with a retired Navy SEAL. She tags Spartan 2. He claims a 2013 covert flight from McMurdo to a no-fly quadrant at 82 degrees 65 degrees E, followed by a rappel through a surface fissure into hallways of polished black basalt, 50 feet wide, lit by violet strips that had no fixtures. On one wall, he says, a 2-meter glyph of a black sun, concentric rings biting a central void, glowed whenever team radios came within 10 feet, as if the emblem itself were an RFID reader. The witness swears the next chamber killed gravity. Drop a multi-tool, and it hung like a dust mote. Howe plays a clipped quote. My altimeter read 2,800 feet below sea level, yet my boots floated. Outlandish, absolutely. But even sober listeners feel the hair rise when a career commando dates and grids his story without stumbling. Physical descriptions dovetail with earlier expedition rumors. A 2002 British Antarctic survey note logged unusually low radar reflectivity, basaltic density in their words, beneath the Beardmore Glacier. Basalt normally forms at mid-ocean ridges, not 3 kilometers inland, which fuels speculation. The corridors are carved, not volcanic. Spartan 2 adds new color, corridors etched by microwave boring that left glassy drip stalactites and floor plates that hummed at 24 kilohertz. He pocketed a pebble, lighter than pumice but magnetic like hematite, later confiscated at Christchurch Customs. Whether a souvenir or tall tale, It squares with Howe's earlier leak of lab notes describing ferrite nanocomposites with isotopic ratios outside terrestrial range. Those pages lack signatures, but they keep Reddit engineers up all night reverse calculating alien metallurgy. The scientific rebuttal brigade arrived fast. Glaciologist Dr. Robin Bell at Lamont Doherty tweets, "Show me the core. Basalt can't hide heat signatures at 40 degs. Satellites would spot it." She points to 2019 TerraSAR X strips, publicly archived, showing no artificial geometry larger than 8 meters. Seismologist Martin Avila argues a vacuumed gravity room would register as a negative Bouguer anomaly, visible in GRACE data, and it isn't there. Both demand ice cores, GPS tags, and raw L-band radar before they even consider the Black Sun. The U.S. National Science Foundation echoes them, noting that every cargo flight to the polar plateau is logged under the Antarctic Treaty. No black helicopters, they insist, not without diesel receipts. Skepticism is healthy. Grand claims meet boring paperwork. Yet the myth engine has deep roots. Nazi occult hunters allegedly scouted Base 211 under Queen Maud Land in 1939, chasing Vril machines and the same Black Sun icon, now plastered across conspiracy forums. After World War II, Admiral Richard Byrd's Operation High Jump dispatched 4,700 men, 13 ships, and a pair of seaplanes to the very sector, officially for mapping, unofficially to neutralize a Nazi holdout. Byrd later told El Mercurio, "The next war could come from the polar regions," a line devotees quote like scripture. Spartan 2's testimony resuscitates those legends, suggesting the Third Reich merely stumbled into tech far older than Aryan lore. If echoes of the emblem span 70-odd years and 2 ideologies, maybe the symbol belongs to neither. Suppose, against stacked odds, the structure is real. Gravity-null zones violate general relativity unless mass is somehow shielded or inertia decoupled, physics that would rewrite propulsion, energy, and, frankly, weaponry. Archaeology would upend too. A basalt complex predating the ice sheet's 4 million year age implies tool-using entities roaming Gondwana. Geneticists already chase panspermia crumbs. An alien lab under Antarctica would pour rocket fuel on those debates. Even a single artifact with non-Earth isotopes could prove independent biogenesis and crush half the textbooks your tuition paid for. So, as midnight hums in your dashboard, where do we aim our skepticism? Demand the raw data, ice cores, isotopes, uncut audio, satellite plates beyond the blue-tinted press images. Remember that fantasies flourish where evidence is gated by treaties, weather windows, and billionaire fuel budgets. Until the basalt floor is live-streamed to the cloud, file the Black Sun beside Loch Ness and wait. But keep one eye on the cold horizon. Sometimes yesterday's campfire story becomes tomorrow's headline. Up next, we'll sift the rubble of a warmer mystery. The real estate bubble on virtual Mars. Don't wander off. Look up. There may be a medieval knight riding shotgun over Earth. The legend begins in 1899 when Nikola Tesla, crouched over his Colorado Springs coil, logged odd signals which appear to be non-terrestrial. That diary line planted the first seed. Fast forward to 1928. Norwegian ham operator Jorgen Hals reported long-delayed echoes, radio pings that boomeranged back after 10 seconds instead of a fraction. In 1954, newspapers quoted retired Marine Corps Major Donald Kehoe, claiming the Air Force was tracking 2 mysterious satellites years before anyone had launched one. Then, December 1998, Shuttle Endeavour's STS-88 snaps a jagged shadow floating just off the payload bay. NASA catalogs the frame as STS-088-72466, but the internet prefers a sexier tag, the Black Knight satellite, allegedly a 13,000-year-old alien guardian. So what exactly fuels the myth machine? First, radar anomalies. On February 11, 1960, the New York Times ran a front-page piece titled "Mysterious Satellite Circles Earth," citing U.S. Navy tracking radars that tagged a dark object in a polar orbit, 79 degrees inclined, completing a lap every 104.5 minutes. NORAD later insisted it was the casing of Discoverer 8, but conspiracy chronologists highlight that Discoverer 8 failed to reach orbit. Amateur group Project Moonwatch in Washington, D.C. logged visual flashes near magnitude 7 and could never correlate them with catalogued debris. Second, the radio crowd piles on. Scottish astronomer Duncan Loonan replotted Hall's echoes in 1973 and claimed they sketched a star map of Epsilon Bootis, a benign "we come in peace" signature if you squint hard enough. Even last year, Italian satellite enthusiast Marco Langbrook told the debrief he still receives sporadic L-band hum at 137 megahertz. He can't match to any NORAD number. Data or pareidolia depends on your caffeine level. Enter mainstream physics with the cold towel. NASA says the STS-88 photos show a thermal blanket that slipped from astronaut Jerry Ross while he installed trunnion covers on the Unity node. Probably thermal insulation from a trunnion pin, the mission report notes. Astrophysicist Jonathan McDowell tweeted in 2017, "Anything that big in a 400-kilometer orbit decays in weeks. If it were real, we'd see it deorbit every 6 months." The U.S. Space Force catalog lists 47,000 tracked objects. None match a centuries-old polar body, roughly the size of a box truck. Meanwhile, the Aerospace Corporation models put blanket fragments at a ballistic coefficient that drops them into the Pacific within 30 days. That math is about as romantic as a parking fine, but it adds up. And yet, the myth refuses to burn up. Psychologists call it the sentinel archetype. Humanity projects a cosmic guardian whenever we feel small. Carl Jung wrote of our technological angels in 1958, and the Black Knight fits the bill. Ancient, watchful, silently judging our first baby steps into space. Pop culture turbocharges the story. Hollywood's Transformers pinned a Decepticon base to the STS-88 photos. Comic writers gave Batman a Black Knight orbital fortress. Legends thrive on emotional ROI. Debunking yields spreadsheets. Belief yields wonder. Try stuffing wonder into a trash can. See how fast the lid blows off. Could 21st century tech settle the question? Possibly. The Space Fence radar in Kwajalein can spot a golf ball at 12,000 kilometers and hasn't filed a nightly report. The crowdsourced SatNogs network logs every unclaimed transmission above 120 MHz. Still, nothing matching Tesla's phantom signal. Exoanalytic Solutions runs 350 commercial telescopes that tag geosynchronous drift debris as small as 15 centimeters. They release nightly dashcam compilations and, spoiler alert, no basalt black paladin sails by. If an object in a weird retrograde orbit, older than agriculture, is out there, it hides better than a stealth fighter behind a nun's habit. So here's my midnight take. Keep the legend. It makes balcony stargazing more fun. But also keep a copy of Heavens Above on your phone. Watch real satellites blink by, check their catalog numbers, and measure magic against math. Like ghost stories around a campfire, belief in the Black Knight reveals more about our appetite for guardianship than about thermal blankets or radar glitches. Maybe Tesla did hear whispers from the sky. Maybe he caught the sound of his own electronic future echoing back. Up next, we'll sift the rubble of a very different relic, the 2-billion-year-old natural nuclear reactor hiding in Gabon. Strap in. What if Bigfoot looks back at you in the mirror? First, people of the Pacific Northwest treat that question as history, not horror. The Tsimshian tell of Bakwaz, a moss-cloaked spirit who lures loggers, and if they taste his food, leaves them forever shaggy and wild. Haida lore keeps a different name, Gagaang, but the pivot remains. A hunter vanishes into cedar fog and returns years later, taller, silent, eyes glowing like coals. Linguist J. Miller writes that elders mark these cases with a calm shrug. There is no missing person. He has simply crossed over. So, for them, Sasquatch isn't a separate species, but a reversible state. A cloak humans can wear when the forest calls debt. That flips the usual cryptid script. The footprint in the mud might belong to your cousin who quit Zoom and never looked back. Modern biology barges in with centrifuges. In 2013, veterinarian Melba Ketchum published a study, self-released after peer reviewers balked, claiming 3 hair samples showed mitochondrial haplogroups consistent with human females and novel nuclear markers. Translation: Mom was Homo sapiens, Dad was something else, probably 8 feet tall and camera shy. The paper hoisted headlines, but geneticist Todd Disotell pulled no punches on NPR. It's junk, sorry. A year later, Oxford's Brian Sykes tested 37 alleged Yeti and Bigfoot hairs from museums and hunters across 4 continents. Result? 27 came back as bear, 4 as cow, 2 as raccoon, 1 as porcupine, and a pair as humans who apparently donated their split ends. Sykes concluded in Proceedings of the Royal Society, no support for an unknown primate. Hard data 1, shaggy romance 0, yet the scoreboard keeps resetting because believers see every null finding as proof the beast is simply better at hide-and-seek. The hide-and-seek angle hides in our own wiring. Psychologist David Livingston Smith notes that the human brain runs a hyperactive agency detector. Better to mistake a shadow for a predator than vice versa. Drop that system into temperate rainforest where moss muffles sound and trunks block sight, and you birth 1,000 tall silhouettes out of tree knots. The University of Wyoming crunched state wildlife and Bigfoot reports. For every 900 black bears, there's 1 Sasquatch sighting, a near-perfect correlation. Bears occasionally rear up, swing arms, and leave 5-toed tracks when the hind foot overlaps the front. The mind supplies the rest. Yet, shape-shifting stories argue we're projecting something deeper than fear, an ancestral ache to ditch the mortgage and grow fur, which raises etiquette. Who owns the myth? When a cable show blares Sasquatch Siege with night vision yells and clickbait thumbnails of blurred humps, the Quileute tribe winces. Folklorist C. Storm says many communities treat shapeshifter tales as cautionary parables, warnings against greed or disrespect, not invitations for ATVs and rifle scopes. Last year, the Tulalip tribes passed a resolution barring commercial expeditions from sacred groves. They wrote, "These beings, if real, are our relatives. If legend, they are still our teachers." Media that harvests shock value without context converts living culture into roadside jerky. Respect means asking before filming, listening before narrating, and realizing some knowledge hides on purpose. But let's entertain the wild premise that the legends are literal. Homo sapiens can toggle into Homo hirsutus under certain ecological or spiritual triggers. Taxonomy would implode. The UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples grants protections to distinct populations. Imagine extending that to seasonal shapeshifters. Forensic science would rewrite missing person protocols, track pheromone signatures, not just dental records. Philosophers would revisit the tired but still explosive question, where does human end? If citizenship, culpability, even family law hinge on morphology, a reversible Bigfoot condition turns the legal system into a revolving door. The upside: an Olympic marathon with Sasquatch entrants would smash world records and sneaker endorsements forever. So where does that leave the night shift listener crunching chips at 1 a.m.? Keep an open mind, but keep a clean chain of custody. If you stumble on a tuft of coarse auburn hair stuck to a cedar trunk, snag it with rubber gloves, seal it in a paper envelope, not plastic, and mail it to a university lab, not a YouTube influencer. Log GPS, time, weather, and any weird odors. Science can't test anecdotes. And if you meet a giant biped whose eyes look oddly familiar, offer respect instead of selfies. After all, you might just be greeting the part of ourselves that still howls at thunder and knows every bend of the river by smell. Up next, we'll sift the rubble of a more quantifiable monster. How cyanide-eating bacteria could clean up gold mines and maybe ruin jewelry prices. Don't wander off. And that's our show tonight, friends. Quite a ride from solar storms rattling fault lines beneath our feet to whispers of artificial intelligence outsmarting its own creators. We traveled from China's ambitious borehole threatening new depths to the Antarctic riddles beneath ice older than recorded history. Let's not forget the shadowy satellite overhead, hinting at watchers from millennia past. And finally, that age-old question of the beast within. Whose face are we really staring at when we glimpse Bigfoot in the shadows? Each night, you join me here. You honor the very human tradition of curiosity. It's your open mind and sense of wonder that keeps the midnight oil burning at the grind. And believe me, there's no place else I'd rather be. While you've got a minute, consider leaving us a rating or comment wherever you're listening. Your thoughts keep this dialogue alive. And for even more mysteries hiding in plain sight, make unexplained.co your regular stop for podcasts, bonus stories, and intriguing extras. Tomorrow night, we'll chase an anomaly you've likely noticed yourself. Is time truly linear, or does it occasionally stutter and slip? You might want to wear your favorite watch, just in case. Until then, keep questioning the obvious. Good night.